The Deji family lived in a humble one-bedroom home that told the story of their resilience. The walls, patched with faded paint, witnessed years of love, sacrifice, and unyielding determination. Mr. Deji, a retired primary school teacher, sat on a creaky wooden chair every evening, poring over old books that reminded him of his days in the classroom. His modest pension barely supported the family, so he often supplemented it by tending to a small vegetable garden behind their house. Mrs. Bola, his wife, worked as a tailor. Her old sewing machine, perched near the small window in her small shop, was her lifeline. Every day, she hunched over it, stitching brightly colored fabrics into dresses and wrappers for customers. The rhythmic hum of the machine was a constant sound in her shop. The Dejis had 3 children, Kola, the eldest, and his 2 younger sisters, Lara and Simi. Life was far from easy for them, but they shared a bond of love and hope that kept them going. From a young age, Kola stood out. He had a sharp mind and a quiet determination that belied his years. At just 14, he understood the weight of his family's struggles. After school, while his friends played football or relaxed at home, Kola would grab a cooler filled with sachets of pure water and head to the streets to sell, to support his family in his own small way. Navigating the crowded streets of Ibadan, he called out to potential customers with a voice full of resolve. "Pure water. Buy your cold pure water here," he shouted, weaving through traffic and dodging impatient Okada riders. Every naira he earned went straight to his mother, who would tuck it away in a small tin box hidden in their kitchen. "Kola, you're too young to be worrying about money," his mom often said, her voice tinged with guilt. "Mama, I want to help," he would reply, flashing a smile that melted her heart. Despite his responsibilities, Kola excelled in school. His teachers often praised him, amazed at how he managed to top his class despite his hardships. He was their pride, a shining star in an otherwise difficult life. As Kola entered SS3, the looming cost of WAEC and JAM registration became a source of worry for the Deji family. Late one night, as the children slept, Mr. Deji sat on the edge of their bed, his face etched with concern. "Bola," he whispered, nudging his wife awake. She murmured, rubbing her eyes. "How do we raise the money for Kola's exams?" "We don't have any savings," he said, his voice heavy with despair. Bola sat up, the weight of his words sinking in. "My husband, the only thing of value we have left in this house is the television. It's old, but we might get enough to cover the fees if we sell it." The suggestion hung in the air, a painful reminder of their reality. Early the next morning, Mr. Deji carried the small television set out of the house. Lara and Simi, tears streaming down their faces. "Papa, please don't sell it," Lara cried. "We have no choice. We have to pay for your brother's WAEC and JAM," he said gently, patting her head. From the corner of the room, Kola watched in silence, his heart heavy with guilt. He clenched his fists, vowing to make their sacrifices worthwhile. With the exam fees paid, Kola threw himself into his studies. Every night, he stayed up late, reading by the flickering light of a kerosene lamp. His father often found him hunched over his books, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Kola, don't overwork yourself," Mr. Deji would say. "I'm fine, Papa," he would reply, determination shining in his eyes. The night before his first paper, Bola walked into the living room to get a drink of water. She found Kola sitting at their old dining table, his notes spread out before him. "Kola, go to bed," she said softly. "You need to rest before tomorrow." "I will, Mama," he said, though he didn't move. Kola's dream of becoming an accountant propelled him to read more. The days of the exams were intense, but Kola approached each paper with confidence. When the exams ended, he resumed hawking pure water, this time saving every kobo he earned for his future. Weeks later, the WAEC results were released. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood, and neighbors began asking if Kola had checked his results. That evening, he dashed to the nearest cyber cafe. When he returned home, he burst through the door, a huge grin on his face. "Mama, Papa, I got all distinctions," he shouted. The house erupted in joy. Mrs. Bola hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I knew it. I knew you could do it, my son, she cried. Neighbors gathered to celebrate, singing and dancing in the small living room. For a family that had known so much hardship, this was a moment of pure triumph. Mr. Deji, although retired, he did all he could to put at least a meaningful meal on the table. God had blessed him with a supportive wife. From the little money she got from her tailoring, used it to support the home. Months after, Kola's excellent results earned him admission to the University of Lagos to study accounting. The news brought both joy and anxiety to the Deji household. Kola, on the other hand, was overjoyed because he knew he was a step closer to becoming the accountant he always dreamt of. But deep down he knew it would not be easy for his parents. Life was already hard enough for the family. How will we afford his tuition and other expenses? Mrs. Bola asked her husband one afternoon as she sewed a customer's dress. We'll manage, Mr. Deji replied. We've come this far. God will provide. The family scraped together the money, selling more belongings and borrowing from people. Kola contributed the money he had saved from hose selling of pure water, though it was a small amount. The night before he left for university, the family gathered for a small prayer session. Kola, remember why you're going to school, his father said. You're not just doing this for yourself, but for all of us. Remember where you are coming from? I won't let you down, Papa, Kola promised. The morning of Kola's departure to the University of Lagos was bittersweet. His belongings were packed into a worn but sturdy bag, and the entire family gathered to see him off. His sisters, Laura and Simi, clung to him, tears streaming down their faces. Kola, we'll miss you so much, Simi whispered, her voice trembling. I'll miss you too, but I'll visit when I can, Kola said, hugging her tightly. His mother, Bola, placed her hands on his shoulders and looked into his eyes. Remember, my son, you carry the hopes of this family. Stay focused. I won't forget, Mama, Kola replied, his voice firm. As the bus pulled out of the park, Kola gazed out of the window, a mix of excitement and apprehension swirling within him. The bustling streets of Ibadan seemed endless, but he was eager to begin this new chapter of his life. The University of Lagos was a world unlike anything Kola had experienced. The sprawling campus buzzed with energy, and students from all walks of life hurried between lectures, library sessions, and social events. Kola quickly realized that surviving in this environment required more than academic brilliance. Many of his peers had access to luxuries he could only dream of: smartphones, laptops, and flashy clothes. But he reminded himself of why he was there. He rented a small, shared room off campus, furnished with only a mattress and a rickety table. Each day, he woke up early to attend lectures, often skipping breakfast to save money. In the evenings, he worked part-time as a cleaner at a local office, earning just enough to cover his basic needs. Despite these challenges, Kola remained focused on his studies. His lecturers soon noticed his dedication, and he quickly became a top performer in his class. Kola's humble nature earned him the respect of his classmates. One of them, Tund, became his closest friend. Tund was from a wealthy family, but he admired Kola's determination and often helped him with resources like textbooks and study materials. You're the most hard-working person I know, Kola, Tund said one evening as they studied together in the library. Thank you, Tund. I just want to make my family proud, Kola replied. A lot is at stake here, he said, smiling. However, Kola often hid the extent of his struggles from his friends. He didn't want pity, and he was determined to stand on his own. Back home, the Deji family continued to make sacrifices to support him. Mrs. Bola sold her cherished wrappers, and Mr. Deji borrowed money from old colleagues just to meet up with payments of his feel. Each time Kola received money from home, he felt a pang of guilt, but also a renewed sense of responsibility. Kola knew his parents had gone through a lot to get the money. Kola could not afford to do the things his mates were doing. He never had a girlfriend. He never went to parties even if it was organized by his department. He knew where he was coming from. He knew how hard his parents had struggled for him to be her. This made him more determined and focused. One day I would be an accountant in a prestigious company, Kola always fondly told Tund while they were reading. By his final year, Kola had made a name for himself on the four walls of campus. He was not only the best student in his department, but also a role model for younger students. I admire Kola. He is very dedicated to his studies. You would never see him go out to party like the rest of his mates, 100-level student said. I even heard he is at the top of his class, another student said. 4 years came and passed so quickly and Kola was preparing for his graduation. On the day of his convocation, Kola was awarded the prize for Best Graduating Student in Accounting. His parents, who had traveled to Lagos for the ceremony, sat in the audience, beaming with pride. They couldn't afford to miss this great day in their son's life. Papa, Mama, this is for you, Kola said, handing them his award after the ceremony. We knew you would do great things, Mr. Deji said, his voice filled with emotion. After graduation, Kola returned home to a hero's welcome. Neighbors came to congratulate him, and his parents couldn't stop talking about his achievements. But the reality of life after school soon set in. Jobs were scarce, and Kola spent months sending out applications to top accounting firms and attending interviews without success. Don't lose hope, my son, Mrs. Bola would say. God's time is the best. Kola spent his days studying job listings and practicing interview questions. He also helped his father with the garden and occasionally took on small accounting tasks for local businesses. One morning, after yet another rejection email, Kola's phone buzzed with a new message. It was from a prestigious oil company in Port Harcourt. They were offering him a position as an accountant with a generous salary and benefits. Kola stared at the screen, his hands trembling. Mama, Papa, I got a job, he shouted. Mrs. Bola dropped to her knees, her hands raised in praise. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Mr. Deji was lost for words, but his heart flooded with gratitude. My son, where is the location of this job? His mom asked with excitement in her voice. Mama, it is in Port Harcourt, Kola answered. That evening, the Deji household was filled with joy. Neighbors gathered to celebrate, singing and dancing late into the night. Kola felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had finally reached the turning point he had worked so hard for. Kola knew that it is a new dawn for his family, because this job was a major breakthrough. As Kola prepared to move to Port Harcourt, his excitement was palpable. He bought a few fairly used clothes and packed his belongings, dreaming of the life he would build for himself and his family. Kola called Tun telling him about his big breakthrough, and Tun was glad. I am so happy for you, my friend. You deserve the best, Kola. So now you would become a PH boy, they both laughed. Although there was so much excitement in the air, something didn't just settle in Mama Kola's heart. There was this level of unease she felt, but she couldn't place it. No matter what she did, she couldn't shake the feeling off. It felt like something was wrong, or was going to go wrong. I feel unease, Mama Kola told her husband one night. What is it about? Papa Kola replied. I really don't know the reason, she replied. It is probably the fact that you would miss Kola, Papa Kola said. Yes, I think that is it. I will really miss him. Port Harcourt is quite a journey from here. We might only see him during the festive period. I am probably just missing him already, Mama Kola said. Meanwhile, Mama Kola's best friend in the compound, Madame Fumi, was consumed with so much jealousy and bitterness towards her friend's son Kola. The evening the whole neighborhood came to celebrate with the Dejis on Kola's new job. Of course she was there too. She was the closest friend to Mama Kola in the neighborhood. She even knew things about the family that other didn't because her friend Mama Kola would always come and confide in her, seeing that she was more elderly too. Madame Fumi was so jealous to the point that she lost her sleep. For nights she couldn't sleep. She was so lost in her thoughts. So you mean Kola of yesterday has gotten a job in a big oil company in Port Harcourt, Kola of which day, while my own children have not even seen the four walls of a university and may never see. Look at my daughter Kimmy, she is hardly at home. She's always following small boys up and down. Look at my son Ao, that one don't even know his left from his right. All my children have nothing to show, while another person's child has gotten a big-time job. Who is Mama Kola? Who does she think she is? Before you know, Kola would move them to a good house, while I am still here wallowing in poverty. Madame Fumi talking to herself one night. Why is my own case different? She screamed. Not under my watch. I must stop Kola, she said, screaming in her room. Very early the next morning, before the day broke, Madame Fumi made her way to a shrine. This wasn't her first time there. On reaching the shrine, the priest was making loud incantations, but as he heard Madame Fumi's footstep he paused. What brings you here this early? Madame Fumi still standing outside the shrine. Come in, the priest said. What brings you here this early? What is the problem? He said. My friend's son, Kola, is the reason I am here. He got a job in an oil company in Port Harcourt. While my own children, none of them has amounted to anything. They are practically useless. I can't seat and let Mama Kola's son go for that job, Madame Fumi said with much anger in her voice. So what do you want me to do for you? The priest asked. Kola would be traveling to Port Harcourt next tomorrow. I want him to have a ghastly motor accident. Let him die in the spot, Madame Fumi said with a hushed smile. Consider it done. Take this oil, rub it on your hands, and make sure you do not touch anyone except Kola. Make sure you have a body contact with him, so that the oil will touch him, then wash it off your hands immediately. The priest said, handing over a small bottle to her. Madame Fumi left the shrine feeling so fulfilled. She got home, rubbed the oil on her hands, and went to the Deji's house. She knocked and entered their parlor. Seated in the parlor was Kola, who was arranging his box. Seeing her, Kola smiled, standing up to greet her. Good morning, Ma, he said, smiling. Madame Fumi came closer to him and hugged him, gently rubbing her oily hands on his back without him noticing. We will miss you, Kola, she said. Don't worry, Ma. I will be coming every festive period, Kola said with a calm voice. Where is my friend? Madame Fumi asked Kola. She is in her shop sewing, he replied. Let me go and meet her there. Let me leave you to arrange your things, she said, leaving the house. Her heart was filled with joy, knowing fully well what she had done. The night before Kola's departure, his father called him aside. Kola, always remember to commit your plans to God. Pray before you leave tomorrow and trust him to guide you. I will, Papa, Kola promised. The morning of Kola's journey to Port Harcourt was filled with excitement and anticipation. The excitement of his journey overshadowed his father's advice. Kola was eager to start his new job and couldn't stop imagining how he would help his family when he began to earn. He woke up before dawn. Nobody in the house was awake. He had to be in the park so early because of the distance. His bags neatly packed by the door. The streets were just beginning to stir as he stepped outside, inhaling the cool morning air. At the motor park, the usual chaos greeted him. Drivers shouted their destinations, hawkers weaved through the crowd selling snacks, and passengers hurried to secure seats. Kola approached the ticket counter and purchased a seat in a bus heading to Port Harcourt. As he waited for the bus to fill, Kola called his parents on the phone. Mama, Papa, I'm about to leave now, he said, his voice filled with excitement. God will go with you, my son, Mr. Deji said. Remember to pray before the journey begins. I will, Papa, Kola replied, though his mind was already racing with thoughts of his new job and the life ahead. When the bus finally departed, Kola settled into his seat, looking out of the window. The scenery changed as they left the bustling city behind, replaced by stretches of green countryside. The mood in the bus was initially lighthearted. Passengers chatted about their destinations, shared snacks, and even joked with one another. Kola joined in briefly, but soon turned his attention to his thoughts, imagining his first day at work. However, 2 hours into the journey, the atmosphere changed. The driver, a stocky man with a thick beard, began speeding recklessly. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances as the bus swerved dangerously around bends. Driver, please slow down, an elderly woman shouted from the back. I beg, let me do my work, the driver snapped, waving her off. Kola, sitting near the middle, felt a knot of anxiety form in his stomach. As the bus hurtled down the highway, the passengers' protests grew louder. But the driver ignored them, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Suddenly, a trailer appeared in the opposite lane, its massive bulk taking up most of the road. Driver, watch out, someone screamed. It was too late. The bus collided head-on with the trailer, the impact shattering the windshield and crumpling the front of the vehicle. The world seemed to stop for a moment before chaos erupted. The scene was devastating. The once lively bus was now a mangled wreck, smoke rising from its twisted frame. The highway was eerily silent, save for the distant wails of approaching sirens. Back at home, everything seemed normal. The Deji household was filled with anticipation. Bola was sewing a customer's dress in her shop when her neighbor, Ifoma, rushed in. Mama Kola, Have you heard about the accident in the Port Harcourt Road? She asked breathlessly. No, what happened? Mama Kola replied, her sewing machine falling silent. A bus collided with a trailer. They say there are no survivors, Ifoma said, her voice trembling. Mama Kola's heart sank. She grabbed her phone and called Kola's number, but it didn't connect. Panic set in as she tried again and again. She ran home immediately. Her shop was just in front of the compound. As Bola entered the house, looking for her husband to tell him what she had just heard, a man from the motor park arrived at their door. Mr. Deji opened the door. The man's face was grim. Are you Kola's family? He asked softly. Yes, Mr. Deji replied, his voice barely audible. I'm so sorry. Your son was in the bus that crashed, the man said. The words hit like a thunderclap. Kola's mum collapsed to the floor, wailing uncontrollably. Mr. Deji stood frozen, his face pale and his eyes unseeing. Neighbors rushed, including Madame Fumi, came to comfort them, but their grief was immeasurable. Madame Fumi's cry was the loudest, as she held and comforted her friend Bola. The news of Kola's death spread quickly through the neighborhood. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers came to pay their respects, sharing in the Deji family's sorrow. He was such a hard-working boy, one neighbor said, shaking his head. This is a great loss. He had so much promise, another added, her eyes brimming with tears. The family's home became a gathering place for mourners. The once lively space now echoed with sobs and prayers. Late one evening, as the mourners trickled away, Mr. Deji sat alone in the living room. He stared at Kola's award for Best Graduating Student, which now sat on the table. Kola, you were supposed to change our lives, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. But amidst his grief, a thought struck him. He remembered his last conversation with Kola and how his son had promised to pray before the journey. If only he had remembered to pray, Mr. Deji murmured. Do you think it is wise to tell people around you about your success and progress? Tell us what you think in the comments section. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story. Please subscribe, like and share.